A good Erev Shabbos, everyone. It's actually 12:27 a.m. Thursday night, as I do for you, for all of us, the segment for the Shabbos table for Parshas Bamidbar, made possible by the Reuben family, and we wish them that they should have gesund, mazel, nachas, and Hashem Shemi Mamali, all of their desires for the good. You know, I've said many times that the Gemara says that Torah is written Eish Shchayra al Eish Levana, which means black fire on white fire. And the explanation is that the words are the black fire, and the spaces, the parchment is the white fire, which needs explanation. The parchments don't say anything, so what kind of fire, what kind of message does it have? And the answer is, we learn a lot from what the Torah does not say. It's learning from omission, from what the Torah chooses not to tell us. So a perfect example is in this week's parasha, when it talks about the Degalim, the banners, it says, Degel Machane Ephraim. And the Oznaim LaTorah, that's Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, asks, that all over it says Livnei Yosef LaEphraim, all over the Torah. It attributes Menashe and Ephraim to Yosef as the representation of the Shevet of Yosef. And how come, asks Reb Zalman Sorotzkin, when it comes to the Degalim, it deletes Yosef. It just says Degel Machane Ephraim. It doesn't say Yosef Degel Machane Ephraim. So he cites a Zohar, and the Zohar says something scary. The Zohar says that because Yosef, so to speak, lorded over his brothers when they came before they knew he was Yosef, and he called them Meraglim, he calls them spies, and he put them into jail, into a mishmar, and he said, he let them call him the Lord of the land, and he said, don't you know, ki nachesh yenachesh ish asher kamoni, you want to try to pull off stealing the goblet, don't you know that a man like me could divine these things? So because he spoke in such a haughty fashion, therefore Hashem Mida Keneged Mida punished him and omitted him from the parsha of the Degalim. You know, Degel, a banner, is greatness. That's why Degel and Gadol is the same letters. I thought, so here's an example of what we learn from omission, that it omitted Yosef. I thought this is kind of scary. A person has to remember that even when he's in a position of power now, and people in the past treated him poorly, which was definitely the case with Yosef. I mean, they took off all his clothing and they lowered him to a pit of snakes and scorpions, and they sold him into slavery. And yet you have to be careful that when you're in a position of power, not to lord over them. That's a very demanding standard. It says, Ve'ela told us Aaron and Moshe, these are the offspring of Aaron and Moshe. And then it doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu's children. It just says Aaron's children. Ve'ela shmois b'nei Aaron, nadav avihu Elazar v'Isamar. So actually this point is made in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, on the Tzadik Tes Amud Beis. Let me quote you the Gemara. Tanya, Amar Shmuel ben Achmeini, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, if you teach your friend's son Torah, it's considered as if you gave birth to them. Shenemar Eila told us Aaron and Moshe, but then afterwards it only says the Bnei Aaron. Ve'ela shmois b'nei Aaron. So it's coming to teach you an Aaron Yolad, or Moshe Lamad. Aaron had them, but Moshe taught them. Lefikach nikru al shmai. They're considered also Moshe Rabbeinu's children. Now, on the simple level, this is the lesson that our our Talmidim are like children. It says, V'shinan tom levonecha, you should teach your children, Ela Talmidim. I tell people a lot of times, you're learning by somebody, and because the shir opens up 15 minutes earlier or 15 minutes later, or they have better coffee there, or the air conditioning is a little better, or there's better parking, you leave the person that you're learning with for many years. You have to realize that if a Talmud is like a child, and the Rebbe is like a father, do you walk away from your father just because of a 15-minute convenience? Because the cake is better? Because they got a Keurig machine? Now, it also teaches us the responsibility of a Rebbe to a Talmud. That's also a very big responsibility. Reb Leil Katz in the Oyel Aryeh says that it says in Pirkei Avos, all the way in the beginning, right, from the lessons of the Anshe Knesset Agdayla, from Shimon HaTzadik, Hamidu Talmidim Harba. And it doesn't say Limdu Talmidim Harba, teach many Talmidim. It says Hamidu, put them on their feet. In other words, just don't teach them. But be like a father that makes a man out of his child, makes a woman out of his daughter. It's a big expectation. The Chavetz Chaim really says something scary, and talk about the obligation of a teacher. Chavetz Chaim says that if a Rebbe, a Mora, is being paid, then they have a din of a shomer sachar. They have a din of like a hired watchman, a hired guardian over their charges. And a shomer sachar is chayiv ba'aveda. So if a child gets lost, then the Rebbe, the Mora, is chayiv. It's a big responsibility to be a Rebbe, to be a Mora. But the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says a different reason why it says that Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Isamar were Moshe Rabbeinu's children. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh tells us that it says, Aaron his anaf Hashem ma'od lashmidai. Even Aaron's part, although unwilling, in the Egel Azav, it says Hashem got angry at Aaron and also wanted to destroy him. And it says that Moshe Rabbeinu says, V'espalel gam ba'ad Aaron. And I also prayed on behalf of Aaron. And Rashi says over there, Ha'ilu tfilasi, my tefillah helped l'machza, l'chaper machza, to atone for half. And therefore, instead of all four of Aaron's children dying, only half died. Umeisu shnayim v'nisharu shnayim. Two died, Nadav and Avihu, and Elazar and Isamar were saved. And therefore, since, says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, since Elazar and Isamar were saved because of Moshe Rabbeinu, they were Nikra al Shmai, they were considered like his children, because they continued to live because of him. So what's the obvious question? The obvious question is, but it says Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Isamar, and Nadav and Avihu weren't saved. They died, so why were they called Moshe Rabbeinu's children? So the answer is that Nadav and Avihu would have also died with the rest of the Chet HaEgel on Shivas B'Tammuz. But they lived longer until Nisan, when there was the inauguration. So Moshe Rabbeinu was responsible for keeping them alive all the way from Shivas B'Tammuz until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and that's why they were called after his name. Now this idea, first of all, that if a person saves a person's life, it's as if they gave birth to them. This is a tremendous thing for doctors. Doctors that do wonderful medicine and wonderful surgeries and catch things early enough to save people, they're like giving birth to them. It's a big thing. But not only, even if a person prolongs a person's life. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. It says that he also gave birth to Nadav and Avihu because he prolonged their life from Shavuos B'Tammuz all the way till Nisan. And therefore we have to know a caretaker that takes care of a chayla. And because of their love, and because of their persistence with the doctors, and because of their care with the person's diet, and because they got them in a good mood, they keep them alive longer, and make no mistake about it. If the chayla is in a good mood and is upbeat and has what to live for, they live longer. There's no question about that. So it's kilu yoldai. Now, I remember when I originally took my Rebbetzin, who was diagnosed Lo Yaleinu, Lo Albaneinu, my Frierdiker Rebbetzin, my first Rebbetzin, Miriam Lieber Basar Baron, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. They gave her a very short time. And she's taken to Sloan Kettering. I took her to Sloan Kettering, and they gave her the routine treatment. And they gave her very little time. So I took her out of there. I took her to the wonderful Malach Hashem, Dr. Hirschfeld, Azriel Hirschfeld. And he moved from one treatment to another treatment. You know, a lot of doctors, they're married to studies. They want to keep studies. He wasn't interested in keeping studies. As soon as the markers stopped going down and went up, he switched to chemo, and he worked to find new drugs. And she ended up living 2.5 years. That's, a caretaker has to look. Nutrition, pain management, that the chayla should be upbeat. If there's no reason to tell, the first year I was able to shield for my wife her diagnosis. That was so good for her. If there's no, every case is different, but if there's no reason to tell the chayla and they could be more upbeat, you work around it. You work around it. I remember my father, Olav Shalom, had pancreatic cancer, and we told him that he had pancreatitis, which mirrors the symptoms, but it's not deadly. And the doctors went along with it. We fired certain doctors. But he had a lot of hope because of that. You know, hope is very important. You know, there's a reason why it says in the Mishber, Refuas HaNefesh, Refuas HaGuf. It's very important to have Refuas HaNefesh, but a caretaker that does a good job. A team of caretakers, children that do a good job. Oh, how wonderful it is what they do. For the chayla, it's kilu yoldai. We should never be tested. Everybody should be gesund. Vayamas Nadav Avihu lefnei Hashem. Nadav and Avihu died before Hashem. Uvanim lo hayu lehem. They didn't have children. Vayichayin Elazar v'Yisamar al pnei Aaron Aviyem. And Elazar and Yisamar took over. So why does it say that Nadav and Avihu died and they didn't have children? So the simple reason is we know that the Gemara says that why did they die? Because they didn't have children. And although it says, V'ferish in the Pasuk, they died because they offered an Eish Zorah, they went outside of the curriculum of the Mikdash. But as we've always explained, if they would have had children, they would have lived because their children would have needed them. Of course, that's the great lesson of that it's tremendous protection to be needed. Because Hashem doesn't take away someone, even if they deserve to be taken away, if they're needed, unless it's their case. You know, Shlomo HaMelech had 1,000 wives. He was very needed. Who knows how many children he had. But he still passed away at 52, because that was his case. But if a person is going to die because of sin, then if they're needed, that would save them. And the same thing everybody asks, why does it say Vayamas Nadav Avihu? It should say Vayamusu. It's plural. So the Yoel Aryeh suggests that the Gemara says they also died because they didn't have wives. They weren't married. So they were vayamas. Each one was an individual. They weren't a team. They weren't a husband and a wife. Again, because if they would have had wives, the wives would have needed them, and they would have been saved because of their wives. This alone. Today we're living in a time that people push off marriage. They push off having children till they have economic stability. You never know that a child or wife could save your life. Because when we're needed, even if we're undeserving, Hashem says, well, but your wife needs you. You're a decent husband, your wife needs you. You're a decent father, your children need you. It's interesting that Chizkuni says a more practical reason why it says Uvanim lo yahayu lahem. They didn't leave over children. Because the Chizkuni says if they would have left over children, then they would have taken over before Elazar Yisamar. Because it says that when it comes to covet, just like Yerusha goes to the older ones, so then the covet, the position of covet, goes to the children of the older ones if they're worthy. But there wasn't a question, because since they didn't have any children, so therefore it passed on to Elazar and Yisamar. But the Klei Yakar says something else, which is a very interesting Klei Yakar. The Klei Yakar says that the pasuk says, "Polkeid avoin avois al banim al shleishim val ribeim." That sometimes Hashem visits the sins of the father on sons, on the next generation or the generation after that. And the Klei Yakar says that maybe for the covet of Aaron, Hashem would have pushed off the punishment 1 or 2 generations if they had children. But since they didn't have children, it's not possible. It's hard to understand that answer, because Hashem only punishes if the children follow after their parents. Right? Because otherwise it says, children don't die for their fathers. Why should we assume that their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would follow with their mistakes? So it's hard to understand that Klei Yakar. The pasuk says, Kol pkudei ha-Leviyim, all of the census of the Leviim, asher pokad Moshe v'Aaron, al pi Hashem, kol zachar miben chodesh. So when it came to count the first census, which was any Leviim from 1 month old, there it only says Moshe and Aaron. But when there was another census with the Leviim, from those that are fit to do the Avodas Masa, the carrying, which is from the ages of 30 to 50, there's very early retirement for the hard labor of the Leviim. So from the ages of 30 to 50, there it says that the counting was done not just by Moshe and Aaron, but it says Kol hapkudim asher pokad Moshe v'Aaron u'nesiya Yisrael. So Rav Soloveitchik, the Griz, asks why by the first census it only says Moshe and Aaron, and by the second census it says also the Nesiya Yisrael. So he quotes that we know that Chazal explained that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was told to count the infants from a month old, so Moshe Rabbeinu says, Heichani nichnas l'soich aleim. How could I go into every tent? We're talking about a huge nation. Leida minyan yonkeyem, to know the nursing children. I'm not going to go in with the women nursing their children. And maybe there's twins, maybe there's triplets. How am I supposed to know? Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe ata asei shelecha. You do yours, v'ani eseh shali, and I'll do mine. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Halach Moshe v'amar al Pesach hayel. He went and stood by every door of each tent. Ubas kol yitzis v'aymer kach v'kach tinaikas. And Abasko declared how many children there were. So the Griz says, since this was already a miraculous occurrence. The Nesiim didn't take part in this. The counting of the 30 to 50, which was a simple census, that the Nesiim took part in. But Rav Shach says an interesting thing. Rav Shach says that you see from here that not always can we figure out how to complete a task, but it's still important for us to attempt to try, to put in our good effort. He makes a comparison to a very hard sugya in the Gemara. You say, this is such a hard sugya, tak v'kayin, tam ki'iker, ribis and bava metzia. There are people that give up before they start. This is just too hard for me. I can't. Yavamis, all those cases, Daf Tes, the Mishnah and Daf Beis. I can't. I just get a headache even looking at the charts. So the Rav Shach says, it's your job to try. And Hashem will help you. I want to explain this, that the Gemara says, here's a person, he can't get up early, and he has to go to work this week he has to be there at 7:30. So that means he would have to get up to go to the 6 o'clock minyan to get up at 5:30. He can't do it. He can't. He'll have to daven in the office with his tefillin when he gets a chance, bichidas. The truth of the matter is, he's right. He can't do it. But if he makes resolves in his mind, it's only this week, I don't want to miss minyan, I'm going to do it. He's not calculating the special strength that Hashem will give him because he wants to do it. And with that extra strength, he'll be able to do it. Somebody says, no, I can't do it. I just can't. You're right. With the facts that you have now, you can't do it. But realize that Hashem will give you a siyata d'shmaya. With that extra siyata d'shmaya, you can do it. You know, Moshe says the same idea. He says, you know, a yeshiva is needed. But there's not enough money. He said, well, if Basia would have said, look, the teva of Moshe floated out too far, I can't reach it, then we wouldn't have a Moshe Rabbeinu. But she stretched out her hand, and then Hashem shot her hand 400 amas. But she had to stretch out her hand, Rav Moshe says. We have to try, even if we can't figure out how to get to the finish line. But if it's right, we got to try. We just can't say, we can't do it, forget it. And I wanted to add that the same thing with the Pach Shemen on Hanukkah. You know, they could have said, we only have for one day. Okay, forget it. The next 7 days we'll have to use Tumah B'tzibah. They cut it up into eights and they put in for all 8 days. And a miracle happened and the eighth became the full oil. But that's because they tried. You got to try. And it's like that in a lot of situations. People say, no, the marriage is just, look, it is what it is. We muddle through, you know. We're strangers in the house. No, you have to have a rotzen. I want it to be better. Hashem put us together. If you have children, it's almost for sure it's your basherta. Hashem put us together. I want it to work. We want it to work. Ooh. Ein davar aimei b'fnei a ratzon. Nothing stands in the way of a ratzon. You want to? Whoa, you want to? That's something else. You want to? Then I'm going to help you. Then I'm going to help you. You want to? Derech sh'adam reitzel leleches me'lichan oisei. Now, I want to talk to you about a few things. First of all, I don't know if you know anybody that it's Nageya. Of course, I put my shiurim on TorahAnytime.com. What's better than Torah Anytime? But Kol Lashon. But for some people that might be able to easier access YouTube, I started putting on the daf and the Mishnayos. I hope I should have the time to be able to do it on YouTube also. If it's Nageya, anybody that uses it, so you could tell them. But as I said, it's great that we have TorahAnytime.com. And they have a campaign going on. Make sure to help them out. They hired 21 people to make Torah Anytime available to us. They have to pay a big payroll, and so you could certainly help them out. Also, I want to tell you that we just started Masechtas Gittin, and that's just great. Just started. It's not too late. We just started it Thursday, so Daf Beis. I'm actually uploading Daf Beis now on Torah Anytime. It's already on YouTube, actually. And, of course, it's on Facebook and on Kol Lashon. But think about starting. It's, it is the way to finish us. You'll say, yeah, but it's so fast. Remember what Rav Palm said. Remember what Rav Pinkus said. That if you learn it, you get into the academy of Shemayim L'Neitzach Netzachim. But you got to learn it once. When is a person going to learn all these Masechtas, Arachim, Tmura, Bechayres? It's only with the Daf Yomi system. So come and join us for Masechtas Gittin. If you would like to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Again, we thank the Rubin family for sponsoring this share. Have a wonderful Shabbos.